Hi, I'm Sue Borison from Your Teen Media, and I'm here with Dr. Adam Price. He is the author of He's Not Lazy,
That's right.
and a very, very popular book for parents, and an essential discussion to have right now as we are quarantined. So, Dr. Price, what are you up to right now? And then we'll get into the questions about what parents can do during this unusual time.
Well, up until last week, I was having a lot of fun traveling around the country talking to parents and teachers about topics such as motivating kids in the classroom, and seeing my patients. This week, I'm doing it all digitally. I'm seeing my patients digitally because I think that that's something that I can do, and it's the right thing to do.
Okay, so we are talking to parents every day about a different topic as it relates to having our families home with us under unusual circumstances. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about today is, what do you do when you have these active boys who are now trapped in a house? And obviously there, excuse me, there are girls who are going to fall into the same situation. But you take high school boys, middle school boys, and you say, we want you to be in your house. Now, first of all, let's ask the first question. How do we get them to take it seriously? And then we'll
Right.
move on to the other suggestions.
Yeah, I think that's where you have to start because the teenagers and the college students that I have been talking to tend to minimize what's going on and think that our reactions are too strong and that we're overdoing it because their lives have been so disrupted. These poor kids, the kids from college that are coming home, some of them won't be able to walk in graduation, or some high school kids. So it really is something that is it disrupts all their lives, but they feel it particularly intensely. So I think it's important that without freaking them out and overwhelming them, we help them to appreciate the severity of it, because that will help them to accept it then. And if they can accept it, then they'll be more cooperative and they'll have safer behavior. So I
So
think that
what's the way to do that? Like,
right.
we tell them that we're anxious and that they shouldn't hang with friends, and then they say, I'm going out to meet a friend.
So I think first of all we have to understand how they see things and how they see the world. It's really important. I always counsel parents to start with empathy. And empathy is not just about understanding someone's perspective, it's about understanding how their perspective makes sense to them. And I think that's really important. So asking, what do you think about all this? Many parents may already know, but I think that's the jumping off point. And remembering that validating someone's feelings is not the same as agreeing with their position. So once that's known, I would then suggest that you don't directly disagree with them, because then they're just going to shut down. I think it's better to take an approach which is, you could be right. I hope you're right. I really do. But maybe it's better. Maybe we'd rather look back and say we did too much than look back and say we didn't do enough. And explain that in other places things are worse, and everybody is predicting that things will get a lot worse here. So I know it really sucks. That's the approach I would take, which is more about starting where they're at and then working in the different perspective.
Okay, so now let's talk about your specialty. You wrote a book about it. What would you recommend in households with high school kids and middle school kids? How do you get the energy out? Like, what do you do in that situation? Like, we are all cooped up in smaller spaces and with nowhere to go.
Right. Well, hopefully kids can still go outside if families have backyards, or front yards, or I think that kids do need to get out and have some fresh air every day. So if that's accessible, it's hard if you're living in a big urban, an urban city like where I live, close to New York City, but I think it's still possible, and I think that's really important. I think that kids need structure. Everybody needs structure. Human beings need structure. It gives us a sense of purpose. It gives us a sense of security. And so online schooling will provide some of that structure, but I think we have to work with kids. And I want to stress that work with kids to decide what kind of structure they're going to have, because throughout this, it's particularly hard on teenagers because they've lost something that's so important to them, which is their independence and their autonomy. And when we don't have a sense of control, we get really, wigged out, and teenagers especially. So I think I'm worried that parents are going to take the attitude, well, now I'm going to make this schedule, and this is what we're going to do from 9 to 9. Now you go along with it, because I think they're going to get into a lot of battles of will. I've already seen that happen. So I think it's better to brainstorm with kids about different activities that they could do. And maybe now all that's called for is being able to have a few activities to do. As time goes on, as kids get more bored, more frustrated, I think they may see the benefit of a more formal schedule. But I think that helping them to kind of feel in control of the process right now is also important and part of the picture. I think now, we've been so worried about online media. We've been so worried about video games. I think now we're understanding the benefit of it, and really welcoming it, because for many kids, it's their only social contact. And so I think parents should think about easing some of the time limits, the screen time they may impose, not relaxing the rules for safe online behavior, but allowing kids to connect that way socially, because playing video games online, things like Snapchat and TikTok and Instagram, they all provide kids with an outlet. So I think that those are two things that are really important. I think it's important to make sure that kids have space, especially teenagers, and I would suggest this for the whole family. Everybody needs some time during the day just to be alone. And if you're lucky enough and everybody in your family has their own room, your worry may be to get your teen out of there. But for other families where kids share rooms, or there's not as much public space, I think it's important to make a schedule so that this is the time that one person can be in that room, and then share it. And that's true for adults too, because otherwise I think we can go bonkers.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a great suggestion. One question that came up in a conversation that your team was having today with other parents, do you let your kids sleep in? So, they're night owls, their circadian rhythm, all of that. Now we have an opportunity to say, Liv, you don't have to get up at 6 a.m. Do we let them do that?
yeah, so I was actually just writing a blog post on this for my Psychology Today blog. While we might ease certain time limits on video games or social media, I think parents need to toe the line on bedtime. And the reason is because with computers and with phones, it's so easy for kids to be sucked into it and then to turn into night owls. And within just a couple of days, your kids are going to be up all night and sleeping all day. So I think that it's important to explain that to them and let them know this is why, and maybe a little bit of a later bedtime, but then to make sure that the phone is being charged downstairs, that the computers are out of the room, so that they can get to sleep. And I think it's better to have that struggle then than to try to go in the morning and try to rouse them. They're going to have to get up for school. We don't all know how that's going to work, but they're going to have some regularity. The more regularity that can be in their day, the better. Including a nighttime routine where the family's playing a game or watching something on TV.
Someone just told us about a school that's already online since Monday, and the kids are literally on their computers the whole day. Like it's a full
Yeah.
day. And that will create a whole separate set of problems for people who you just can't attend to something that virtual and nobody to look at and make a face at or anything. So any thoughts there?
Wow, I hadn't thought of that, let alone carpal tunnel. I mean, we could see an increase in carpal tunnel syndrome with all this computers stuff. I don't know how to get around it. If a family has the ability to project onto a TV, through all the different ways that we do that and the room to do that, that would be a great not solution, but a better alternative than looking at just one screen. I don't know. I mean, maybe kids are going to want to take a break from all this by the end of the day. Certainly, that's a really good point, though, Susan, because that gives parents the opportunity to say, "You've been on the computer all day, so your eyes need a break. It's not good for your eyes or your posture. So we're going to turn it off for a while. You got to go do some exercise. You got to go outside, whatever you want to do. And then, later on, if you want to go back and use it for entertainment, you can." But that kind of builds in, I think that builds in a rationale for parents that kids can understand. And the more that they can understand the rationale, the more cooperative they're going to be.
When they're driving us crazy, what do we do?
When they're driving us crazy, what do we do? What do you mean?
We're all cooped up in a like unusual circumstances, space with four walls. Inevitably, we're going to get on each other's nerves. So
Well,
when they're teenagers, that's going to happen.
mm-hmm. So try to avoid that from happening by doing some of the things that we've talked about, and I'm sure some of your other guests have talked about. I'm sure you're gathering a lot of great information and tips that's going to be really helpful to parents. This is really a wonderful idea. But I think that parents have to really be careful about the battles that they choose to fight right now. Again, it's not the time to, it's not your chance to finally get him to take out the trash because he's home and you're home all day. If he hasn't been doing it, I think it's important to choose your battles. I think it's important to really be mindful and not let fights escalate with kids because they can very quickly, and not to bicker. Bickering, it never leads to a solution, and it always leads to bringing everybody down. So I think the more that parents can, be adults and do that, the better. It's hard. Parents also have to take care of themselves, themselves emotionally, because you're going to be so focused on your kids and your family, especially moms, who are just going to be so focused on taking care of everybody else. It's really important right now not to neglect your own mental health, emotional needs. Learn from your kids and have a happy hour or a coffee clutch online with your friends. Go on a date with another couple and do it just online. So I think that's important too. And then when things do melt down, I think it's time to get some space. And if the teen isn't going to go to their corner, their quiet corner, wherever it is, then you have to. Then you have to just say, listen, I'm gonna go downstairs, or I'm gonna go here, and we'll revisit this.
That's great.
Yeah.
So for the parents who loved your book, which there was so much conversation on all of our Facebook groups,
Yeah, great. Thank you.
and people putting out questions about they think their kid is lazy, and then there would be this whole stream of people saying, you got to read this book.
Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah. So for that audience of people, what do you tell them now?
The kids the parents of kids who aren't motivated
Yeah.
for school, it's gonna, and especially the kids who have ADHD too, where they need more movement, they need more engagement, where looking at a screen all day that's a teacher is not going to be so engaging. I think that the same principles apply though. Kids really need autonomy, they need a sense of choice over their work as much as we can give them. Parents need to not, this is really a pitfall that parents could fall into even more, which is now that they're home all day, are you looking at the screen? Are you doing your work? Are you, making sure that they're doing everything that they're supposed to? And I think that that's not a good road to go down. When they're online, they're still in school and you're not there. And when they're doing their homework, they still need to be able to figure it out on their own. I don't know how grades are going to work during this period of time, or tests, or all those kinds of things. So it'll be harder for parents to have a barometer of what's happening. Maybe it will require an email to a teacher to find out, so that if a parent is going to impose some limits, if a child isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing in school, doing okay, then maybe they need that kind of feedback in order to be able to say, you need to kind of step it up by it. But it's hard because what I tell parents is, say to the kids, you have too much time online, or you have too much time outside, so we're going to limit that so you do more work. It's going to be challenging, because there's not a lot we want to take away, or we should take away. So I think everybody should get a pass right now. I think that it'll probably just happen, because I personally, I don't really know, but I don't think that the requirements can be as stringent or onerous when it's online education, for little kids and high school students. So I think it's also time to just breathe and not worry as much, because it's really scary out there, and there are much bigger problems that we're facing and contending with. And I think, I don't want to say everybody's going to be okay, because obviously everybody's not. We hope most of the population, most of our country is, but our kids are gonna get through this, and they're gonna be just as good next year if they missed a little bit of their education this year.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you, Dr. Adam Price, author of He's Not Lazy. We really appreciate your advice.
Thank you again for giving me the opportunity.